Welcome back to part 4 of our series where we are building a TD Ameritrade API client for Python. So in our last video, we talked about the state manager method, and then we also talked about the login method. So these were really the two important methods that were necessary in order to start our workflow authentication process. And then after ideally a successful authentication, we can then save the state of our client object. So that way, when we rerun our script, we're not having to go through the full authentication process again. We can just use our refresh token in order to start making requests. So now that we've talked about the login method and the state manager method, we're going to move on to the logout method, and it's really, really simple. So the logout method basically is just going to set the state manager to a net. That's really all it's going to do. I mean, technically too, I've kind of even debated if that's necessary, just because once it's set back to a net, I mean, I guess if you were doing something where you wanted to, I guess during the script you wanted to log out and then relog back in or something like that. I mean, I guess there's different reasons why you might want to do this. Again, this was kind of following the Microsoft Graph example, but basically what you can do is with the logout method is you can basically set the state back to the initialized values. So you can get rid of things like the access token, the refresh token, and things along that nature. So that way, if they do want to log in again, it would have to go to the file to try to get the values, or it could also be a situation where maybe they want to clear out the cache value. So I mean, different reasons of why you would want to do it, but it's just kind of nice to have it if you do need to use it. And it's really simple. You're just basically changing the state manager back to a net. So that's the logout method. Now comes the other fun one, the grab access token method. And so again, we want this to be available to the object. And with this one, again, just to kind of save time a little bit, we're going to copy some code that I've previously written. And so with this one, we're making a request to the access token endpoint. And so with that particular one, I believe it's a post method, if I remember correctly. Is it post? Yes, it's post. And so what we do is we have to post a couple pieces of information. We need to pass through our client ID. We need to pass through our redirect code. So I got to change this a little bit because obviously it will change depending on what your URL redirect code is. And so I'm going to make this more general, but right now for testing purposes, I've just left it to mine. And then also I'm going to be doing the redirect URI as well. So this is all just different pieces of information. And then technically, I'm sorry, I didn't really clarify it, but all this little section right here is it's parsing the URL that we got from the login method, and it's grabbing the code portion of it. So again, all it's doing is it's taking that URL and it's parsing it, so that way we just have the code, and then it's building the the dictionary needed to make our post request. And so once we've built that particular payload, what we can do is post the data to the token endpoint. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable. We'll call it token response, something simple. We'll do request dot post, and then we'll do URL equals self dot config, and then we'll do the token endpoint. So this is again coming from our configuration dictionary. We'll have our data equal the data. I guess I should name it something different, but I'll do that later. And then also we're going to do verify equals true. So this is just a way of saying it's like an authenticated request and things like that. So otherwise you get this little error warning and stuff like that. And this is just to avoid that. There's other ways you can do it, but I just found this one was the easiest. So once we've done that, we've gotten a response. Great. Let's move to the next step. We want to save our token. And so we'll call the save token method. And again, this will make more sense when we get to it. Ooh. Apparently can't type. So we'll call the token save method. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pass through the token response. So this is really just the JSON data that was sent back to us. And then once we've done that, we can also do a couple other things. So then we can update the state. And so what that means is we'll say if we got a token response, so basically if anything was sent back, that's the first requirement, and if the token response is okay, so that means it was a successful request, then what we'll do is we'll call the state manager and we will enact the save action. And so basically this will save the information that we've gotten from our access token, and it will save it to the configuration, to the JSON file. So that's the grab access token method. Again, it's just basically the second part of the authentication workflow where we go and post the data necessary to go and get an access token. And then what we do is we save the token, and then we also save the state. And so these two are kind of used in tandem. It might not look like that at first, but when we get to it, it'll make a little bit more sense. So now that we've done that, we're going to do a couple more. So we're going to do the define silent SSO. So this is a new method, and this is going to do a silent authentication. I probably should move this up here just to make it a little bit easier and kind of more intuitive, but whatever. All this one's doing is it does the silent authentication process. And all we're going to do is we're going to say if self.token seconds is greater than 0, so if our token hasn't expired, then what we can do is just return true. So if the token hasn't expired, guess what? You don't need to do the silent authentication because it's still active. There's nothing broken about it. Otherwise, what we need to do is if the current access token is expired, then grab the refresh token and then call the token refresh method. And so we'll say elif self.state, and then we'll do refresh token. So as long as we have a refresh token, then go and try and do the token refresh method and return true. Because if we were successful with that, then guess what? We are authenticated. So just some notes to ourselves. If it's not expired, it's good. And then otherwise, if it's expired, try and get a refresh token. And then otherwise, we can't do either one. So it's expired and something went wrong with the refresh token. Well, guess what? This is probably a first-time login, so return false, and then that means they're going to have to go through the entire process of providing their credentials. Or something happened with the refresh token. So technically, if you were to like go into that JSON file and start messing around with things and renaming things, then yes, it's very easy for this to fail, even though you think there's a refresh token in there. So don't modify the JSON file unless you can verify that everything else has been modified along with it. Otherwise, there is a potential this could fail. Not guaranteed, but just to be aware of it. So now that we've done that, let's define our token refresh method. And so again, take self. And with this one, I'm going to copy some more payload information. We'll just copy all of it. And then we'll go through it, right? Sometimes it's just easier to copy. So with the token refresh, funny enough, I didn't talk about this in one of my videos, which I'm kind of shocked because I thought I did, but of course I didn't. All we're doing is we're going to the token endpoint again, but in this particular request, in this particular post request, instead of doing a grant type of authorization code, what we're doing is a grant type of refresh token. And so if we do a grant type of refresh token, we just need our consumer ID and then the refresh token that we got during our initial access token post. So Once we do this one, it will return a refresh token. And then when all we're doing with the token refresh method is we're going to that same endpoint, but instead of asking for a new access token, we're just saying, hey, give us a refresh token instead. And so again, we're going to the token endpoint. There's our data. And again, it still needs to be a verified request. And then once we do that, we again want to save our token. So very important we do that. So that is the token refresh method. The next one is our token save method. This will take self and then our response. And so with this one, we are taking the response we got from our initial grab access token method, and we are updating our state, or our state dictionary, I guess, if you want to be response. So the first thing we need to do is parse the data. And so all that means is take and create a new variable called JSON data, and we will do a response, so the response that was passed through. And because it's a response object, we will have the JSON method that we can then call. So this will parse it and convert it to a Python dictionary. Make sure the access token is there. Again, sometimes it can parse, but that doesn't mean there's actually an access token. Make sure the access token is there. And so we'll say if access token, so if it's there, and well, sorry, if the access token not in JSON data, then what you want to do, then log out. So basically just have them go through the authentication process again because something obviously went wrong, and then return false. Okay, so that's an easy one. Basically, we're just going to try to fail early. Something went wrong. I don't know what necessarily it is, but we're just going to log out, start anew. Otherwise, if there is an access token, update the state. And so we'll say self.state, and then we'll do access token, and we'll say JSON data, so because now it's been parsed, and we'll grab the access token value. And then from here, and the logged in state. So this is, again, we're going to call our self.state. We're going to do logged in, and we're going to say, hey, guess what? You got your access token. You're good to go. Perfect. You're logged in. And then we want to store when the token expires, because obviously up here, we're leveraging that with our silent authentication. So we need to know when it expires, because if it's expired, well, we need to get a refresh token. Or if it's not expired, we don't need to do anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to say self.state. We're going to say token expires at, and that will equal time.time. And then we're going to do plus int JSON data. And then there is something in there called expires in. And then this will be the number of seconds until expiration. So basically this will be when the token expires. And then also we want to store the refresh token. So we'll say self.state refresh token. I'm praying to God I spelled everything right. I do that a lot. And then we're going to go and get the refresh token. Again, this is just, I don't know why I did get, but you can just do it like that too. Again, it's kind of up to you. There's other ways of doing it, but basically at this point, once you've done that, all we're going to do is return true. So that basically means, hey, everything was successful. So if it wasn't successful, return false. If it was successful, return true. Alrighty. So 2 more methods, I think. Yes. Oh, God, don't tell me I lost my notes. Oh. Okay, well, that's fine. I mean, I have the other one, so it doesn't really matter, but regardless. All right, so we're going to define a couple more methods. We're going to do token seconds. So this is the number of seconds until the current access token will expire. So it's really simple. We'll say if not self.state access token, access token, or time is greater than or equal to self.state token expires at return 0. So what's this going on? So first, if you don't have an access token, well, guess what? You basically are expired in a sense, so return 0. Or if the current time that we are at is greater than what the token expiration time is, guess what? Your token's expired, so return 0. Basically what you're saying is the token has 0 seconds left. Otherwise, if this isn't the case, then you can say return int self.state token expires at, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say minus time.time, and then you're good to go. So this will turn the number of seconds until the access token is expired. So now that we've done that, we're going to define one last method, token validation. And so with this one, we're going to say self and seconds equals 5. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say if self.token seconds is less than n seconds, and self.config refresh enabled. So if you're allowing for a refresh token, self.token refresh. Perfect. Okay, and I need to get the rest of my code from somewhere else. Oh no, that was it. I don't know why I thought there was more. I don't know. Okay. So this one's pretty simple too. So again, basically what we're saying is if the number of seconds is less than the number of seconds that we've set as our threshold. So in this case, we're saying, hey, if the access token has less than 5 seconds left till expiration, and the user has allowed for refresh enabled, then just go through a token refresh process. So basically call this little guy right up here, and you should be good to go. So with that being said though, guess what? We have basically built our client's authentication process. So this is really all the things we need in order to authenticate ourselves and automate as much as of the process as possible. So that way you don't have to worry about logging in every time and everything like that. This will do all of that for you. So what I'm going to do in the next video is I'm going to show you this in action. We'll go through the authentication process so that way you understand what you need to do in order to use it, but then also you can see it in action. And we'll play around with it a little bit. So we'll change certain attributes and see how that affects the authentication workflow. So that is what's up in the next video. With this video, if you have any questions about kind of any of the methods we've talked about so far or anything along that nature, feel free to put them down in the comments below and I will try to get back to you. And then, like I said, next video we'll go through testing it. So thank you again for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next video.